McMenamins Edgefield 6th Annual Brewfest is happening this month, June 21st to the 23rd. That's where you can spend 3 whole days celebrating all things hoppy, malty, and delicious. You'll be able to enjoy a selection of over 100 of the Pacific Northwest's finest craft beers and ciders at one of the most beautiful outdoor venues in our state. You can bring chairs and blankets, family, friends, and even your pup for an afternoon with great brews and live music. Plus a barbecue with the brewers themselves on Friday night, where you'll have first dibs in trying all of the beers. Go grab your tickets now at mcmenamins.com. This month on CityCast Portland, we're interviewing candidates running to be the next mayor of our city. And today on the show, we're talking to our very first candidate, Keith Wilson. He's the president and CEO of a regional transportation company that includes an all-electric truck fleet. He's also the founder of Shelter Portland, a nonprofit that addresses unsheltered homelessness in our city. So today on CityCast Portland, we're talking to Keith Wilson about why he thinks he's fit for the job. It's Thursday, June 13th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. How would you like me to refer to you? Would you like Mr. Wilson, Keith, KW?
No, if we were in like 11th grade, it'd be Wee Willie Wilson, but we're going to stay away from that one.
Wee Willie Wilson? That's awful.
Not my favorite. And that was one of the nicer ones, so we'll stick with that one.
Oh, I don't like that one bit. Let's go back in time and kick some ass.
It's all good, Ben. Just Keith.
Okay, Keith. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
You know, one of your mayoral platforms I found very interesting. It's making the 2040 Cascadia Olympics happen, which is Portland, Seattle, Vancouver coming together and hosting the Summer Olympics. Is this a movement or is this just a Keith dream?
Well, I want people to know that the best days are in front of us. We're so focused on what's going on in the humanitarian crisis. We need to know that we're going to get through the troubles we're experiencing right now because all communities have. And we will, but let's always have that North Star on what can make our region great. But Claudia, that's also tied in with my executive membership with the U.S. High-Speed Rail. So I've been working with the administration and Congress on funding high-speed rail, which is the Cascadia. Mm-hmm. And if we have a spectacle at the end of that very large project, it really is how we drive big projects forward when we have that circle date. Hey, we have to have it done by then. That's how our nation does big projects well when we can do them fast. So that's that North Star. Like, hey, everybody, if we built the high-speed rail along this very important mega region, New Main Street, we could have the first bi-country multi-city Olympics called the Cascadia. It's that dream, but it's definitely a possibility, but we have to really
I love it.
Put it on paper. Thank you.
Well, I'm curious, what would your sport be? Now imagine different world. Keith, you're not running for mayor, you're an athlete. Like, I know for sure mine would be breakdancing. I would like to be a B-girl because that is going to be this next Olympics' new Olympic sport is breakdancing. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Pretty excited about that. Grew up breakdancing as a child. What about you, Keith? What would your sport be?
All right. It's always about being a basketball wannabe. So I was the 13th member on my varsity basketball team, but it was only 12 members on the team. So that'll tell you where I sat on the bench. No, truth be told, I was probably number 12 out of 12, but I love basketball. It's always been my passion. I still play, not well, but come on. Wouldn't that be great to be on the dream team, going to the Olympics,
yeah, back in the
and
90s?
Hopefully getting a medal?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay. Just thank you for that. I was just curious. Well, if you had to pick just one thing that isn't working in Portland right now, you know, what would it be and how would you fix it? Just pick one thing.
Without a question, and absolutely the most important issue is unsheltered homelessness. It's those individuals in tents, makeshift shelters, and inoperable, unlicensed, uninsured RVs. Those individuals are absolutely suffering. And in that suffering, it's compromised the livability of every single person in Portland. So it affects all of us. And so how I would fix it is I've spent this last 6 years traveling the nation and traveling the world, working with mayors, county officials, and federal officials on learning best practices in cities who have ended unsheltered homelessness. Mm-hmm. So today, I have 10 national leaders who've helped me with a blueprint. They've vetted my plan. Many of them have ended on shelter homes. For instance, the mayor of Boise, who was the appellate on Martin versus Boise, is on my team. I have President Obama's assistant secretary to reduce homelessness on my team. And I have county officials who've ended on shelter homelessness on my team. And in turn, that blueprint has now created a board, a Shelter Portland board that I put together, a nonprofit. And those board members are all executive directors for local homeless service providers. And Claudia, what we've done this last many years is we've started setting up shelters to proof point what the blueprint is and how it is effective. So I've been partnering with nighttime shelters, and I've been able to deliver nighttime emergency shelters at $16 per person per night. When you compare that with a Safe Rest Village at $167 per night, we can deliver nighttime emergency shelters at 10% of what the city is doing it for. So now we're going to scale that up.
I want to pause you there for 1 sec.
Sure.
So you gave me some numbers, but ultimately what we're trying to do is house these people long term, right?
Absolutely.
So the money sometimes, especially for the Safe Rest, the reason that money is so high is because they're also getting connected to services. There's staff on site. Does your funding include that, or is it just, as you said, emergency? Because with the Safe Rest, it's a bit more than emergency. It's actually placing. Will yours also be placing into long-term housing, or is it just going to be an in and out, revolving door of someone getting housed for the night? Because that's what's decided isn't working.
You're right. And Claudia, everything we're talking about, it's a continuum. Mm-hmm. So it's a path that we're working on. First and foremost, we can't have people on the street. It's inhumane, it's unsafe, and it's cruel to everybody. So that's that first and foremost thing. You said, what's that big item I'll be focused on? Now that's the first inning, is absolutely caring for our community and focusing on safety so no one dies on the street. We have 4,000 or 5,000 people on the street, Claudia. 400 of them are going to die this year. That's a public safety emergency. Now, I also opened a day shelter 8 weeks ago in Montevilla on 82nd Avenue and Ash. The day shelter is kind of like that second inning. First inning, save people's lives. Emergency is occurring, humanitarian crisis. Think of it like an earthquake. Next inning, second inning is day shelter. How do we help address recovery? How do we then begin to address the root cause to then move them into housing, or to move them to a Safe Rest Village or a temporary alternative shelter, or to a 24-hour congregate shelter, or housing Multnomah Now into an actual
So
home.
what I'm hearing is that you're not saying I want to replace the Safe Rest shelters.
Oh, no.
Because you came in with a number and it felt a little oppositional, like they're doing this, but I'm going to do this. But what you're saying is a supplement.
That's exactly, yeah.
Like that's working, because that is working.
Yes.
But like what we need is nightly shelters. Because here's the deal, Keith. We all know that's what is needed. Everyone's like, we need more shelter beds. We need more shelter beds like yesterday. What's your plan? Like, what do you think you're going to do different that the city isn't doing right now that's going to create these shelter beds in a year, in 2 years?
I'll say it's not known. It's like with our failed city politicians, they continue to think that we need a 24-hour shelter with wraparound services, which is $167 per person per night. We need those, but we don't need to close other shelters. So in 2017, we started closing all of our nighttime shelters, Claudia. We closed shelters in the middle of a humanitarian crisis because they wouldn't move to 24-hour shelter, and that's the Salvation Army female emergency shelters. We don't fund Bybee Lakes completely. We have people literally dying on the street. And so I don't think it's rocket science that I'm professing. In Philadelphia, all they have are nighttime emergency shelters. In Boise, that's all they provide. In Portland, we only provide 24-hour high-cost shelter, which are very expensive to build and set up. All I'm saying is we're going to augment that with standard operating processes that are happening in Boise, in Boston, in Philadelphia, and in New Orleans, all communities that I've visited with, and I've begun to understand how their best practices work. And they don't have people living on the street in their communities. And as mayor, we're not going to have people living on the street here, because we're going to provide basic, low-cost, immediate care.
Gotcha. You've been quoted as saying that city politicians and their failed policies are what got us into this mess and cannot be trusted to get us out, that we need real change for our great city. Now, coming from the private sector, what makes you more qualified than experienced city leaders, in your opinion?
just looking at my professional record. So Titan, the transportation company I own and operate, is generally in an unsafe business. We're 24 hours, bunch of trucks and docks and such like that. We have the lowest workforce injury rate in the state. My company, we don't use a single gallon of fossil fuel in our Portland fleet. We've removed 84% of fossil fuels throughout our 3-state. Everybody keeps telling me things that I can't do, but if emissions reduction is my core value, we have to do it. And now we have the first fleet of heavy-duty electric trucks. All very difficult things to achieve, Claudia. Mm-hmm. And now because of that, we've received National Innovator of the Year for the last 2 years. So why am I going to be different? A record of innovation, a record of success. And as mayor, it's really a two-sided coin, if you will. You have to have focus on inspiration, understand vision and mission for the city that we're setting up. So just the technical aspect, I'll be managing an $8 billion budget and 7,000 staff members, and understanding and creating a mission so everybody understands where the team is going, where the city is heading, and the focus on service. That's the more technical aspects, right? That's the inspiration. How do we really bring us back to where the city that works? But now let's look at it from the operational standpoint.
Keith, I'm so sorry, but I feel like people come in with big ideas. People are people smarter than some of the city leaders? Oh, yes. But then they get into the machine of governorship and they lose their footing because they have to go, oh, I didn't know it worked this way. So I'm asking you, Keith Wilson, you have wonderful ideas. You have a great team and stuff, but you're a CEO.
Yeah, right.
And I feel like a CEO having a control of your own company is going to be so different than working, because the mayor is a weak mayor. You have to work with so many different people. And now with the new iteration of the government, we're going to have, I don't know, so many other voices, 12 new voices. So how do you think you're going to be able to get your ambitious agenda across?
Right. And so executive orders are still a tool of the mayor. And I would say that it's not a weak mayor. The mayor of Portland is going to be able to have budget writing. Budget writing is policy, and that is policy that we're going to be able to determine what's the vision for the city. So complete control over the city government is going to allow me the operational control over ending unsheltered homelessness. So talking about the plan, how do we implement the plan? Essentially, Claudia, it's setting up 12 to 18 nighttime emergency shelters quickly, treating it like it's a public safety emergency. That's all in my purview as mayor. I'm in charge of public safety, infrastructure, and right-of-way. I'll be working collaboratively with the council. That first couple weeks, we're going to declare a public safety emergency to immediately begin the process of setting up those nighttime emergency shelters. I've already begun the conversation of working and talking with every single one of them about, here's what we're going to do. And I'm having the conversation with all Portlanders right now. When you vote for me, we're going to implement this nighttime emergency shelters and the day shelters immediately to end unsheltered homelessness so we can restore public safety in Portland. Now, I've got a plan. I've been working with mayors from around the country already on the plan, and they've been helping me with the technical aspects of what we're going to do. So it's not me coming pie in the sky, but it is a clear goal of what we're going to do in that first year, and also within the first months of taking over as mayor. And you're right, I will work with the council very closely because it's going to affect every community and neighborhood in the city.
So what I'm hearing is you are depending on running executive orders?
Well, the public safety emergency will be worked with our council, and I firmly expect that every single one of them will partner with me on this because, again, we have 4,000 people living on the street. We're going to end that immediately in Portland because we have to.
Okay, well, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, more with mayoral candidate Keith Wilson. Now, your platform lists a lot of big and wide-ranging ideas from, as we've been discussing, ending homelessness to ending open drug use. Then we discussed the building high-speed rail and the Olympics.
I try not, Now, those are fun because I want to bring back the dream in Portland.
Right. And you also want to restore confidence in public safety.
Yeah.
Are you thinking these will be achievable within your first 4 years, or what was the timeline for all of this that you're thinking like, oh, this is going to work? I mean, I know we're not going to get a high-speed rail in 4 years, but I'm just saying it's a lot,
Yeah. Those are long-term, Claudia. So the high-speed rail and those things, those are long-term goals, but there are more immediate long-term goals. But let's talk about the short-term goals. Next year, in the first 12 months, ending unsheltered homelessness and restoring confidence in our public safety system. And then the third and final is restoring the vitalization or our business climate. And so we talked about homelessness. Let's pivot to that second item, which is restoring public safety. All right. So right now, we generally arrest about 10,000 people per year. And about half of those, or 5,000, are of the unsheltered. Our officers are spending half of their arrest time arresting the same souls over and over again. That's why we have to end unsheltered homelessness first. When we do that, we immediately reduce the arrest rate and our public safety system improves. So a decade ago, it took 6 minutes to respond in a priority call in your worst time of need when you absolutely needed an officer there. Today, it's 24 minutes for an officer to respond. In a medium or low priority call, sometimes they don't show up at all. We have an overloaded, overburdened police workforce that are arresting and criminalizing poverty and the unsheltered and unsheltered homelessness, and they're only about 1% of our population, yet they're consuming 50% of our arrests. That's why when we end unsheltered homelessness quickly, swiftly, at low cost, and immediately, we're restoring public safety. Because if you're in shelter, Claudia, you only represent about 2% of the arrests, or about 200 arrests last year if you're in shelter. That's how we reset our public safety system and we begin to restore confidence. Community policing, we've disbanded our traffic safety department. We've disbanded a lot of our inspector and detective departments. We now get to start right-sizing our police force back to what it was really geared for, and that's community policing.
So you're thinking ending unshelteredness in 1 year. What's the roadmap?
So I explained it. Public safety emergency, so we can start marshaling the needs.
Oh,
we're gonna.
So you would declare an emergency?
Public safety emergency within that 2 weeks, working with council, so we can then begin the interim budget action to stand it. We're going to need to start $5 million to begin that prep and process. We've already started finding shelter locations, churches, community centers that we're going to repurpose at night.
Okay.
Because we're an emergency. Think about this. Think of it in an earthquake sort of thing. And all we're doing is we're repurposing assets at night, a church, a community center. Mm-hmm. We're going to use a facility. We don't need to set one cornerstone. We need to build a single thing. And then we're going to start putting the teams together. I've already started assembling homeless service providers. I've already spoke to the neighborhood emergency team coordinator. We have 1,100 volunteers that we're going to rally. And on April 1st or thereabouts, we're going to then implement the program where the volunteers are on the front side. We'll have nighttime staff members managing the nighttime shelters. And then we're going to start ending unsheltered homelessness, removing the encampments and the RVs. And it'll take a 90-day period in which to do that. But technically, it's all doable, and it's all been done before. So this is what essentially the mayor of Boise did, and he's been advising me on how he ended unsheltered homelessness after he lost this pivotal court case called Martin versus Boise. And he was required to have shelter in his community that met the level of individuals that were unsheltered. So we're going to do the same thing, and we have to do it quickly because you can't do it halfway. The county and the city are saying we're going to end or reduce homelessness by 50% by the end of 2025. Well, what about the other 50% that are still left on the street?
You said 90-day emergency. I feel like Portland has declared housing emergencies numerous times since like 2016. How is this going to be any different?
We're setting up nighttime shelters, Claudia. We're not going to say we're going to end homelessness. We're going to end unsheltered homelessness. Every community that has ended homelessness always ended unsheltered homelessness first. We've got ours upside down. We're trying to house an incredible amount of individuals. And while we're doing that, we have a tremendous amount of inflow into our community, homeless upon arrival. I was with the police officers three months ago, and we arrested a guy who just arrived from Florida in an RV. And the police officer arrested him, called the DA from Florida while we're sitting there in the Veracats Esplanade. And the DA said, nope, he's not in Florida. If you want to bring him back, fine. But we're not going to enforce the warrant. So we unhandcuffed the guy, we let him go, and then the police officer acted as a parking agent for the guy in his RV. And I said, hold on, you guys, you just released. He had an unregistered vehicle. I'm sure it's uninsured. Why'd you do that? Well, because we don't have enough shelter beds, that's considered the person's primary residence. And I thought that is such an upside down world where we have a RV running around town that's uninsured, unlicensed, and our officers are acting as parking attendants. That's an upside down world that we have to right size. Claudia, we have to provide basic nighttime shelter en masse to care for every single person on the road. And then we start enforcing our codes to care for everybody, both the housed and the unhoused. I really appreciate you keeping on this, because I want that disbelief to be clearly talked about, because this is how it works in most cities around the nation. It's not working in Portland. And again, this is not rocket science.
But I keep hearing basically is saying, hey, Portland has not attempted to do this one thing that, is working everywhere else, which is to do these emergency shelters.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing, Keith, is that we speak to a lot of homeless providers, like people who are out in the streets, providing services. And the big thing they bring back over and over again is like a lot of women are actually not comfortable going to these shelters because they're not policed. They are afraid they're going to get raped. There's also, men that are afraid they're going to get robbed. There's just a lot of they feel a lot of anxiety of this lawlessness of these night shelters. So that's what I think. This is why I keep bringing this up. I'm like, are you sure? Because it's like a lot of homeless people don't want to go to these shelters. And so I'm asking you, how is this the silver bullet if it has been tried other places? It doesn't seem to work out really for the long term. And there are homeless people saying, I don't want to go there.
Yeah. Okay. So Claudia, it does work everywhere else except for Portland. So I just want to say it does work, and it's necessary in every community that I've visited who've ended unsheltered homelessness. But let me answer your question. So the shelters that I've had, you're right. I've been testing low barrier and medium barrier, and then there's also high barrier, which is clean and sober. And those are not what I'm professing. A low barrier is a open shelter where somebody's actively addicted or there might be behavioral health issues. And those are open at night from 9 to 7. And you can come and go because we're just trying to provide basic nighttime security and safety for that individual. Now, medium barrier shelter, which is the one we were using and partnering with United Gospel Mission and Church of Nazarene on I-205 and Powell, that's a medium barrier. That one opens at 9, it closes at 11, and it's a safe sleep shelter. Think about 3 or 4 women that come in, and it's a mat, so it's not a congregate shelter where you get one bunk bed away from your friends. We want you to bring your community in with your pets, 3 or 4 women, and we see it often. And those 3 or 4 women will go to the corner and they'll be in their social network or their safety community together. And pets are welcome. So you see, we really center that person in a trauma-informed way, but it's not going to be in a bunk bed. It's not a traditional congregate shelter where you get one bed and you got to be in that bed and your friends and your family aren't going to be around you. We let you bring in your street family or your biological family, and you can have 3 or 4 or 5 beds. And then what we try and do, Claudia, is we try and pick you off. It's warm in here. You don't have to go back on the street. We have care for you. We can help you with housing. We can help you with all these services. So it's that natural process where we're really trying to bring you back into society. And then in the day shelter, Claudia, as well, I've got a work systems program where we're going to be able to pay you an hour worth of work or 2 hours worth of work. We start doing dopamine replacement with working and providing with the community. It's really healthy. And it's very focused on getting that person back on their feet. But it's never, ever handing out a tent saying it's safer to be on the street. Because I can tell you what's going on in those encampments at night, Claudia. It is horrific for women. The amount of addiction, guns, person-on-person crime. We have a lawless society going on in Portland, and we need to help those individuals back into our community.
Agreed. So here we're asking this question to all of the candidates that we'll be interviewing. When I used to be in a band, I would go on tour and I would leave Portland for months and end. There was always a thing that I would look forward to the most coming back home. For me, it was eating a salad. Just being on the road, it's just hard to find good food. And so I would always I would really just imagine all the vegetables that I could get, just think about what's in season right now. I want that. What restaurant will make it the best? Yes, that's what I want. I'm curious, when you leave Portland for your work, I know you're a busy person. What's the one thing that you're most excited to experience when you come back?
So, Claudia, my guilty pleasure is a tea burger. So there's a grill, a bar grill over there in North Portland on Lombard, and it's called the Twilight Room. And they got this tea. It's called the tea burger, and I'm telling you, it is big, it is juicy, and it has an egg, cheese, big old patty, special sauce. Man, there is nothing better than to get into one of those. Now, I'll want to be absolutely truthful. It's about maybe once every 2 years I'm getting into one of those, but it's a special occasion. All right.
Oh, I know the Twilight Room. So yeah. I might see you there once every year or so.
I grew up there, and so that's my neighborhood bar, and it's where all my friends and I end up with, because just my name's on the ceiling, and it's just a great. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I graduated I got a master's degree at University of Portland. So one of the privileges is putting your chalk name on the ceiling. So it's always a great place to go back to.
That's awesome. Well, Keith, I sincerely appreciate you like getting into the nitty gritty with me. It sounds like you have really thought about this, and I just appreciate your time and good luck.
And thank you. And, I'd like to ask your listeners to go to keithwilsonformayor.com. It's a big topic, but there's been a lot of good research, and I've got a wonderful team behind me who've already vetted this. And so it's something we're going to have to do, whether it's sooner, me as mayor, or later. We cannot have our community members living on the street in a civil society where we're caring for everybody.
After we spoke with Keith Wilson, our following mayoral candidate interviewee, Lev Ostis, gave us the great idea of asking all the candidates what their campaign song would be. So we emailed Keith for his submission, and this is what he said. I would have to go with High Hopes' Panic at the Disco. Both hope and action in the song's name and the band name, respectively, two things we desperately need in Portland. I must say ABBA's Take a Chance on Me is a close second, but I am certain I can help lead Portland out of this mess our leaders have gotten us into. Thanks again to Keith for his time, and be sure to listen next Tuesday to hear our interview with Lev Ostis. And now for some events happening this week. Every Thursday on the show, we like to bring you a few recommendations to help you plan your weekend. Here's what we got. This Friday and every Friday all summer long, Kickstand Comedy is hosting comedy at Laurelhurst Park. Blankets drop at 6 p.m. Show starts at 6:30. You might see our executive producer, John, there. It's been a lifelong dream of his to check it out. Also, starting this Saturday night, Mississippi Records is hosting a 100-year birthday celebration for Portland-born American folk music legend Harry Smith. There will be films and live performances throughout the weekend at Hollywood Theater, Turn, and Clinton Street Theater. This Sunday, the Portland Pickles will have a home game against the Bend Bucks. Game starts at 7 at Lens Park. It's been my lifelong dream to attend a Wolf Wednesday, so who knows, maybe next week. Also this Sunday is Sunday Parkways, and CityCast Portland will be at a booth from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. over at Fernhill Park on Northeast 37th Avenue in Cully. Ride your bike over and say hello. We'll have stickers and high fives to hand out. We'd love to meet you. For even more local events and news, sign up for our daily newsletter, Hey Portland. We'll throw all links in the show notes. Well, that's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.